Hello,
Greetings,
and
everyone. Hello, world. Bash, want to say
hello,
hi?
and welcome to Arguments Amongst Friends.
Friends arguing. All right.
Friends arguing, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Bass and I are friends, and we love to argue. So we're going to try to argue in a more civilized manner and broadcast it to the world. And the stuff that we will be making videos about are the things we actually argue about in our real lives. The only difference will be I will try not to talk over Bass, which I have a habit of doing. And Bass, you will try not to shout and yell when you get angry and say, I don't care what you think. So we're going to try to argue more civilized and share with the world. So, Bass, would you like to go? And our topic today is Trump, North Korea in the context of, and also drawing on what implications of any of the Michael Cohen hearing, the public one happening the same day as Trump and Rocket Man having their negotiations the same day. So, Bass, would you like to go first to talk about that?
Okay, so I'd like to say at the outset that I'm Australian and I'm fairly conservative. Yoshi, who is the other host, who cares not to show her visage, is Canadian and is a liberal. Now, there's nothing wrong with either of those views. All right. I strongly support a lot of liberal positions, and I'm sure that Yoshi is not uh, not pushing for outright socialism. On the same token, we disagree on a lot of topics, and we argue a lot. And we thought that it might be a good idea to bring some of these ideas to YouTube, because we are entertained by them, and we hope that other people would be entertained by them. And we both actually do a fair bit of research into these topics, and we thought that getting a balanced view with different ideas from either side, arguing it out, might actually be valuable to the general public. Now, I've been drinking. I've had a couple of bowls of wine, and I've cooked a couple of meals today. However, I hope that I can still put forward a concise and valid idea of what my side of the story is. Yoshi, back to you.
I actually don't belong to any particular political ideology. It depends. So although people do think of me as socialist, communist, that's typically what they'll call me. And if they're feeling really generous, they'll say I'm a liberal. I actually don't belong to any particular ideology. I have voted, in terms of Canada, I have voted for all the major political parties and some that aren't major. I would describe myself in general. I'm for universal human rights. I believe in the sanctity of each human being, that we inherently, for purposes of political organization and how we need to think about ourselves, I think of each human being. It has sanctity and therefore worthy of human rights. I'm a feminist, humanist, and yeah, okay. So yeah, basically I don't belong to any particular ideology because depending on what I'm talking about, would depend on what ideology people would want to slot me in. Sometimes people think I'm a rabid, far right-wing conservative Nazi. I have been called those things. So, just depends on the topic, I guess.
Hey,
So,
boss, I'm a humanist as well. And, I think that deep down we agree on more things than we disagree.
that's probably
Even
true.
though I might be a right-wing Aussie and you're a left-wing Canadian. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. This is going to be what makes these conversations interesting. So, what
So
was the thing?
I wonder if we should start with, very quickly, maybe, or as short as succinct as we can. Why do we even care about North Korea? So we're taking the global geopolitical perspective, right? And in terms of that, why do we even care about North Korea? Why do we care about the United States coming to some arrangement with North Korea? And if we do care, what should the result be? What should the result be? What should come of this?
Okay, so obviously the problem is that North Korea could potentially become a nuclear capable state, which is capable of hurting, of inflicting mass homicide on other first world nations. Like, most obviously Japan, but potentially even America. Or Canada for that matter, but
So
I don't.
we don't. So the idea is, in the geopolitical sense, it's a bad
We don't
idea.
want them to become a nuclear state.
Do we
Like,
want any state in the world to be a nuclear state? Why is it particularly bad for North Korea to be a nuclear state? There's actually reasons for why I'm asking this. We have several nuclear states in the world. Why is it particularly bad for North
and I
Korea?
would agree with you. You look at Pakistan versus India. They're both nuclear states, and the conflict over Kashmir recently could have easily have resulted in nuclear war, but they stepped back from the brink.
Because both of them have mutually assured destruction against the other. One assumes that's why they step back from the brink.
Something along those lines. And I don't think that there's an appreciation amongst the youth today on how precarious our foothold is on the precipice. Like, the US, the Soviet Union, not the Soviet, and Russia still actually has nuclear weapons. They can still use them.
Russia is a nuclear state, absolutely. Within the geography of Russia itself, of course, they still have nuclear missiles, as well as amongst former Soviet Union states. Although they're not as well tracked since the split up of the Soviet Union, that was a big issue. In terms of imminent nuclear war, in terms of Western nations, the last time we felt that way was probably the 1980s. The last time there was that big fear, and there were even movies made in the 1980s about a nuclear holocaust. So you're right. Young people currently today haven't lived with that, background radiation. Oh my God, we can be
that
destroyed.
shadow over their head, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And but the shadow to a certain extent still exists. And like, I think that the Democrats, by demonizing Trump for not dissing basically Russia, and actually saying that Putin has, like, to a certain extent it's good for America for Russia to have a firm hand in control of it, because otherwise it's a big fucking country. Like, can you imagine if Russia balkanized and there were all sorts of nutjobs in control of different nuclear weapons? Like, this is not an ideal outcome.
Are you saying that it's good that Putin is a dictator?
It's good that Putin has control over Russia. Yes, for sure.
So dictators are a necessary stability to have in the world? Why don't we like him then? Because he's definitely a dictator. He has very strong control over North Korea. Why don't we like him?
What's to dislike about Kim?
Then why do not? Then why do we worry about him becoming a nuclear state? I'm just asking these questions for the audience because
because Kim is not yet a nuclear state, or at least not yet to our knowledge, and we don't want any more nuclear actors in the world than we already have.
Okay.
Like, I can understand why Kim wants to be a nuclear state, because it gives him leverage against the rest of the world. But, you know, why?
Do you think it would also give him leverage, literally, to survive? Because North Korea has observed what happens around the world. They've observed what happened in Iraq. They observed what happened with Gaddafi, who gave up his nuclear ambitions.
Is chemical weapon storage, and then the US fucking came in and smacked his ass anyway, which was fucking totally, obviously, under Obama and Hillary, and reprehensible, quite frankly. Like, so if you go and make a deal, fucking keep to it. Don't bloody then go in and...
Yeah, because Gaddafi did a 180-degree turn to accommodate the United States' interests.
Exactly.
And
then he ends up, getting shot down hiding in a fucking sewage tunnel. Like, how does that encourage people like, Kim Jong-un to do the same thing? Like, it's reprehensible.
So I'm thinking, because in North Korea there's a very strong protection of the leader is a really big thing in North Korea. The females in the audience may appreciate your gesture, Bass.
I'm just trying to be funny. Don't mind me.
I say females in the audience because Bass is heterosexual. Anyway, okay, so giving away your sexual orientation here.
Like, it's not fucking obvious anyway. I got fucking female asses behind my head.
Okay, so you actually agree and can see the logic and sense of why North Korea wants a nuclear weapon, because
it secures them.
His safety. That literally secures his safety. And in North Korea, amongst the leaders of North Korea since post-World War II, when the first Kim, protection of the leader, that's a really big thing. Like, consolidation of their power, protecting their power, that's a really big thing. And it's led to them making, for example, I think it was in 2009, they devalued the currency because they didn't want the market economy becoming too powerful or too big. And that turned into such a Kim. That was before the current Kim. That was his dad. His dad devalued the currency because his dad was concerned about the market economy. That's been there since at least the 90s anyway, because of the collapse of so-called communist nations. So a market economy developed because the people were so hungry and starving, they basically abandoned the government program because the government was no longer feeding the people. So they developed a market economy so they could eat. And then in 2009, he devalued the currency because he wanted to wipe out the wealth of the market, of individuals having wealth. And the consequences of that were so severe. And then they realized if we ever try to stop the market economy again, the leader will get overthrown. That's how scary it was for them. So they've been a market economy for several years. That's a fact of life in North Korea. North Korea is a capitalist market economy. That is what it is now. It's not a communist. It's not really a communist country anymore. So
I'm sure internally it's not. Like,
it's
no other option otherwise except to survive.
Yeah, it's definitely a market economy. Jeez. They have central government projects like any other country would, right? I mean, you have military, you have, public projects, that kind of stuff, like other nations do. That exists in North Korea as well. So it's a market economy. So, okay, so the idea is we don't want another nuclear state. I don't know what the issues are in particular to North Korea. I'm thinking that the issue for the United States, in particular with North Korea, is they see North Korea as a communist state, and they have a particular strong feelings that they don't want such states to have nuclear weapons. Iran, they think of as, they absolutely do not want Iran to have nuclear weapons either, the United States. I would say that's a goal of U.S. foreign policy, is that neither North Korea or Iran have nuclear weapons.
Why would you want either of those countries to have nuclear weapons?
Well, I don't want any country in the world to have nuclear weapons. That's kind of my stand on it. I would like, on a global level, the world to be denuclearized in terms of weaponry. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen. That's probably pie in the sky today.
Right. So wouldn't you want people who are not inclined to use nuclear weapons to have them to disincentivize those who might acquire nuclear weapons to actually produce them?
Well, unfortunately, the United States has a history of invading countries that don't have nuclear weapons. This is the history of the United States.
Let's look at recent history where Trump is trying to withdraw from Syria.
Oh, I actually agree with Trump. Actually, one of the things I really liked about Trump that I thought was a really good and positive thing is he's starting the conversation, at least has people talking about the idea of, we need to get the hell out of other countries. Well, we shouldn't be there. Unfortunately, Trump is confusing because he's kind of talking out two sides of his face. Because he's saying, let's get out of Syria, but let's invade Venezuela for their oil. So that's kind of the confusing part.
No, I disagree with that in synopsis.
But he's actually said that, though.
Well, can you provide evidence, I guess?
I was watching him on TV, and he actually said it. I apologize for not recalling.
Okay, so he's literally said that he
literally said we should invade Venezuela, free the people, and they can pay us with 50% of their oil. He actually very specifically talked about it concretely, saying we should invade them.
Well, why is that a bad idea?
No, I'm not saying good or bad.
Seriously, people are starving to death over there. Like, they could probably do with the Americans coming in.
First of all, the reason why Venezuela is having a particularly tough time right now is because both the United States and Britain have taken their gold. Have taken their gold, kept their money, and they're not allowing them to sell their oil. This is why there's particularly a lot of suffering right now. It's because of sanctions.
Yeah, I think it's largely because they're a socialist nation.
No, it's the sanctions. They have capitalism there.
Well, they shouldn't have chosen socialism, should they?
It was democratically elected government, Bass. Are you saying the people don't have a right to be they're a democracy, Bass. They're actually they're
Do you think
elected.
that most of the people choose to be starving to death these days?
Okay, first of all, of course nobody chooses to starve, Bass. So let's lift the economic sanctions so that they can exist and live. It's not the government that's starving them. It's the economic sanctions imposed
No,
on them.
it is the government who is starving them.
For
Literally,
the
Maduro
sanctions,
is
oh, before the
stopping the aid at the border to prevent his people getting relief.
Okay, there's dispute as to what that aid actually entails. And if they really wanted to give aid to Venezuela, it's very simple. Stop the economic sanctions. It's that easy. And let them have their billions of dollars. Britain is keeping their gold reserves. They're not allowing Venezuela to use their gold to buy food. The United States has seized all assets and profits from investments that Venezuela has made in the United States. So Venezuela does not have access to several billions of dollars. Why not just let them have their money so they can buy food for their people? Why not just let them have their money?
Because they're preventing their people from eating as it is.
No, the
They
trade
literally are. There's literally food aid coming at the border, which Maduro is stopping from coming into their people.
Actually, that's not completely accurate.
How is that not accurate?
Because they want to be able to use military personnel to drive those trucks to inside the country. Maduro has said, no, I will not allow any military personnel from a foreign nation into my country. You must give us the trucks. And they won't do that. They're saying, no, you have to let us use our military to drive the trucks into your country. Maduro is not a fool. He's not going to let a foreign army invade his country. He's not dumb. They already tried to kill him. Remember that assassination attempt that failed? Why is he going to let military
trucks? It succeeded. Like, Jesus Christ. How many millions of Venezuelans need to die before you'll admit that Maduro has been taking them down a bad path?
I don't dispute that Maduro has made some bad decisions. That's not what I'm disputing. What I'm disputing is the actual reason for all of the hardship. Maduro is only part of it. A key part of the hardship that Venezuela is suffering is the trade sanctions imposed against them by the United States and Britain and possibly other nations as well.
Quite frankly,
if we want to help, sorry, go ahead.
I disagree.
Yeah, I think
Maduro is responsible for his own fucking misfortunes, and
responsible for bad decisions he's made. But if we steal their resource, if we steal their gold and steal their money, that's us making that decision. Well, specifically the United States and the UK, because Maduro is democratically elected. I mean, that would be like us saying, "Oh, Trump has made some bad decisions. We're going to invade the United States because Trump made some bad decisions."
Let's just impeach Trump, shall we? But even Pelosi goes, "Oh no, that's a bad idea."
See, I'm trying to show how silly this argument is to say, "Oh, Maduro has made some bad decisions, therefore we need to invade them." Why not let the Venezuelans deal with the bad decisions?
I'm not saying we should invade. I'm saying that, you know, they can self-destruct in their own way.
They're not self-destructing, though.
They are.
No, I disagree.
How do you disagree?
The Venezuelan people, in and of themselves, okay, are participating in a market economy, buying and selling. Market economy, just like the United States, the UK, any other number of democracies. Okay,
last I heard that there were thousands of people fleeing the country every day, and you know, obviously the currency has collapsed, and you know, Maduro is desperately trying to hang on to power.
Okay, a typical reason for women fleeing Venezuela, because you're right, there's large numbers of women fleeing, is the culture community within which they live that's very dangerous to them. That's nothing to do with them living in a market economy. That's everything to do with living in a culture that promotes and accepts violence amongst the people. So yes, women, men, children are fleeing violence. Yeah, absolutely. They don't want to be subjected to violence.
They're
That's
fleeing
not the
the violence of the
Yeah,
socialist system.
that's not the
I can't
socialist
please.
system.
I agree with them.
I don't. Okay, we'll have to agree to disagree on what the causes of the violence are. But if you're a mother who's being raped by her male neighbor, I don't think that has anything to do with socialism. That has more to do with living in a country that accepts.
Actually, I think it has a lot to do with socialism, and that's why the culture has gone to shit. Like, you don't experience that in more capitalist societies. Let's put it that way. Unless you're living in a really dodgy neighborhood, mostly you're actually pretty safe from being raped by your neighbor. In Venezuela, apparently that's not a safeguard.
We'll have to agree to disagree, because in countries that do nothing for their people, the violence against women and children is even worse. But we'll just have to agree to disagree on that. You and I are
so
on the fact.
The US does nothing for their people, and does Australia do nothing for their people, or Canada? Like, why is Venezuela apparently a paragon of government when Australia and
I actually don't think
have
Venezuela is
much lower rates of this sort of thing?
I don't. Maduro has actually made some errors, which has not helped.
You're literally trying to make excuses for a socialist government. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
For a socialist government, boss. I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to say what the facts are.
You literally are. You're trying to excuse a socialist government for
I'm trying to ask why
happened.
No, I'm trying to ask. I think Maduro has made serious errors. No one who's smart disputes that. What I'm trying to say is, we haven't helped the people with our sanctions. It has made their situation much, much worse. If we lifted the economic sanctions, they would cling less tightly to Maduro, because Maduro, represents a besieged nation, wants to protect his people because of the trade sanctions. We are making him look better by imposing trade sanctions. This is my concern and worry. If we would lift the trade sanctions, it would give other leaders opportunity, because they do have a democratic system. International observers said their elections were fair and properly done. That their democracy is very robust.
But hey, yeah, continue.
Okay, so if we lifted the trade sanctions, because it's a democratic nation, do you not think it would give people the opportunity to say, we don't need Maduro, we're not in a desperate situation, we're a democracy, we can elect whoever we want? Because there were opposition.
Last I heard was that the last elections were massively rorted. So I don't know, I don't care, I completely agree with you. But they seem to be stuck with Maduro, whatever happens. Right?
They voted for him.
Okay, so the outcome of the last elections may have been questionable.
Not according to independent observers that were there. Independent observers from all over the world went.
Well, that's fine. Do you think that a government should be allowed to drive a large proportion of their population into, famine?
Okay, this is part of the problem. If you impose economic sanctions against a country,
this is a government who has decided on certain policies, which is driving their population into famine, to the point where they're eating pets, eating zoo animals, literally fleeing over the borders and literally dying of starvation.
I think part of the difficulty is depending on which information we access depends on what facts we're presented with. Because depending on, I mean, there are stories coming out where, you know, they've gone to their zoo and they're eating all the animals, and there's other stories that are saying, no, go to the grocery store. The grocery stores are full of food. So I don't know which story do you want to believe or listen to?
And I would agree with such. However, I would sort of say, you know, we can't believe all stories. And which are you more likely to believe?
So let's see if we can agree on something. Do you agree that that the assets in the United States and the UK that belong to Venezuela is being denied to them? That has been taken. Do you agree that that has actually happened? We need to figure.
Probably.
Okay.
Right.
Do you agree that the UK took all the gold reserves that Venezuela had stored there and they're withholding it from them? Do you agree on that fact?
I would assume such.
Do you agree on the fact that Venezuela is no longer allowed to sell their oil to, for example, the Koch brothers who've been buying it and processing it in their refineries? That they're no longer allowed to be paid for it. Do you agree on that?
I have no idea.
Okay. I have a suggestion, because I think this Venezuela situation is actually really fascinating and interesting.
How did we get onto Venezuela when we were meant to be talking about?
Yeah, I know.
Fucking, you know, talking
I'd
about.
like to do a show about Venezuela, actually, because I think Venezuela is emblematic of a global thing that needs to be talked about. It might even have more implications than even Korea. North Korea is going to get their nuclear weapons. We're not going to stop them. I think North
Korea has nuclear weapons. We're trying to stop them from implementing their ability to apply them. And
I don't think Korea will stop them.
You know, we can probably shoot them down over when they're flying over the Atlantic Ocean or whatever. But, you know, it's a serious threat. Like, you can't say that that they're not a problem. And likewise,
I don't mean to suggest they're not a problem. They're certainly a very serious problem to their people. I mean, North Koreans are having a tough time there. I mean, thank goodness that they did develop a market economy. Otherwise, almost all of them would be dead of starvation by now because of the policies implemented by the Kim leaders, that they basically had to turn the other way and allow these private markets to spring up, because in the 1990s, the North Korean government literally had no food to distribute to the people. So the people had to fend for themselves. And as a consequence, the market economy developed. They traded with each other, and that's just what happened. And it was literally a response to mass starvation. So the North Korean leadership was forced by a famine to say, we have to let this private market economy. So they're a capitalist country now. That's just a fact of what happened as a consequence of the mass famine there of the 1990s, 94 in particular. 2009, they wanted to squash the market system, but the response of the populace was so severe that they realized, if we don't allow these markets, we will be overthrown. And their number one raison d'etre is the regime must survive. Self-preservation. And because self-preservation is number one with them, you know, the resources are to the military first before anything else. So it's okay for people to starve as long as our military is strong to preserve the regime. So I think, and I'm not saying this is good, I'm not saying it should be this way, but I predict that North Korea will be nuclear capable with long-range nuclear missiles, that it will happen. That's my prediction.
Okay. Have you finished your rant?
Yeah, I'm done actually. I'd be interested in your input.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate having an opportunity to speak. Um, well, why should we allow North Korea to become a nuclear nation? Like, you know, let's just snip this in the bud while we can. Because, you know, realistically, we don't want another psycho fucking nuclear capable regime in Asia. Like, it's bad enough having China. Like, they're fucking off the rails already. Why do we want to add North Korea into the mix? And, you know, equally, like, China is fucking assholes. Like, let's actually support Taiwan and tell China to go fuck themselves. Um, I apologize if any of this language is not appropriate for a
This
a
particular show will have limited circulation.
fuck fuck all of them.
Okay, that's fine.
My point being is that you can't sort of like go, okay, this country is allowed to have. Why can't Taiwan have nuclear weapons then? Right? And allow them to nuke bloody China or uh, North Korea or South Korea. Why can't South Korea nuke North Korea? Like, where is it going to end? Like, the entire point is that Trump is trying to end this madness instead of allowing it to proliferate. And sure, we can have bad outcomes. And I may be a drunken
I
idiot.
actually agree with Trump meeting with Kim in person. I thought that was a good decision, actually. I think that was great that he did that because one of the games that the US was playing with North Korea all these 70 years is you're not good enough to talk to a president. And that just made it, that just generated negative feelings within North Korea that didn't need to be there in opposition to. I think it's a worthy goal to have as few nuclear nations as possible. I think that's a great start, personally. So I actually agreed with Trump meeting Kim in person. I thought that was a great decision of Trump to do that. You want to show respect to your adversary, otherwise they won't sit at the table and talk. It's all smoke and mirrors until people feel respected. So good on Trump for meeting with Kim in person. I give Trump points for that. And I think he should continue to do so because I think that's the best chance of, at the very least, delaying the acquisition of Korea becoming nuclearized long range. I think the best chance of that is for presidents of the United States to continue meeting with Kim in person, talking with him, discussing with him.
Well,
And
to be honest, the same could be applied to us to a certain extent. I thank you for being prepared to come and talk to me in person because, you know, I think that the case that you're making is insupportable, and mine is actually that of the majority of the population.
are you saying your perspective personally?
Yes.
I don't dispute that, Bass. I was just trying to say I thought it was a good idea for Trump to meet Kim in person. I think one of the huge impediments to negotiating a solution with North Korea is this attitude before Trump that the United States had of, you're not good enough to meet with an actual president of the United States. That was kind of their snobby attitude. And that was that generated strong.
So that wasn't a problem with Trump.
I'm trying to say Trump made a good decision to meet with Kim in person. That's what I'm trying to say. Trying to say Trump did something good. That's what I'm trying to say here. I agree with Trump doing that. Meet with Kim in person. Leader to leader. I think that will do a lot more than the snobbish stance the U.S. had for 70 years of, we're not going to send you our best to talk to you. That doesn't work. So yeah, I agree with Trump meeting in person. I'm not saying North Korea should have nuclear weapons. And I think we could delay it significantly if they would lift the trade sanctions against North Korea. Because
no. We're not going to lift the trade sanctions until they provide adequate evidence that they have actually walked back their nuclear testing. And I think that that's a reasonable position to take.
And I understand that people feel that way. This is a reasonable ask of North Korea, but we need to recognize what is in the mind and reality of North Korea. In the mind and reality of North Korea, their understanding is,
if you want to be have a strong economy like the rest of the world, then you need to comply with what our expectations are.
What did that do for Gaddafi? What did that do for Saddam Hussein?
Well, that was the Democrats, I would point out.
What did that do for, that
was the fucking Democrats, I would point out.
Well, it's the United States. The United States is the United States. Doesn't matter who did it.
No, it was the Democrats who indulged in double dealing and did not actually fucking hold true to any promises. My God, why am I?
We're taking the geopolitical perspective, right? In the geopolitical perspective, we're talking about actions of the
Democrats did not hold true to any of their promises.
Well, Democrats and Republicans
why would anyone actually trust the United States after the Democrats actually didn't hold true to any of their promises? Is basically it.
You're just making some generic statement.
Okay. No, I'm saying, why would anyone trust the U.S. after the Democrats were in power and fuck them over? Why would they?
Okay, in North Korea doesn't make a distinction. This is where things are confusing. North Korea, okay, when they look at the whole history of their relationship with the United States, is not going to break it down to what the Democrats did, what the Republicans did. That's not how it gets broken down in their mind. They're looking at the United States. What has the United States done? What have the presidents done? So in the geopolitical sense, it's not useful I just don't see it as useful to talk like that, because in the geopolitical sense, North Korea does not break it down.
Well, from my perspective, what the Democrats did in regards to North Korea was probably not beneficial.
Well, let's talk specifics. Obviously, the Democrats had Michael Cohen testifying the day of Trump and Kim negotiating.
Yeah. Do you think that was on purpose?
Okay, I think that was very helpful to Trump, actually, that happened the same.
No, do you think that was on purpose? Like a deliberate effort?
I'm trying to figure out who engineered it. Was it
negotiations?
I'm trying to figure out who engineered it, because it really worked out in Trump's favor, I think, to have the Michael Cohen testimony the same day. I think that really worked out for Trump. They gave him several aces in his deck to play. That Michael Cohen, and I'm wondering if that's why.
How does it appear to a foreign audience?
Well, I think in terms of geopolitics, I think the United States is already seen as unpredictable and unreliable. So this would not have changed that impression. In terms of on the international scene, the United States is not seen as particularly predictable or reliable. And this is probably a good time to wrap this up, Beth, because you look like you're passing out. So how about we wrap this up at this point, because you look like you're ready to fall asleep.
I am a little of that.
Okay, so all right. So let's say goodbye to our limited audience.
Non-existent fucking people who are listening.
No, we can pass this around. We can certainly ask our friends if they want to watch this.
No, we shouldn't ask our friends. We should take this as a practice video and
All right.
go from there.
Okay.